Some of the documentaries that you shot, Roger, were in war zones, weren't they? So I guess kind of embracing the fact you can't control what's kind of happening to kind of capture everything. It feels very kind of raw and authentic, the way that you shot the film.
Yeah, I mean, I was never I think we were under fire once or twice, but it wasn't really a shooting war when I was with the places I'd been. I was in Eritrea with the guerrillas in Eritrea, and that would have been about 1980. But I was never actually in a full-on battle. Sometimes there would be shots fired across the territory, but nothing really. A bomb went off now and again, but I wasn't in anything like was shown in Jarhead, put it that way.
But at the same time, the thing that's so great about Jarhead is the fact that, many of the characters don't actually fire at the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting when the film came out, people reacted against it, said, well, it's a film about war, but nothing happens. But that was a point, these people trained to kill, and then that almost disappointment at the end that they hadn't fulfilled the job, the job they were trained for. Then it was written by, a guy that was there, and that was his experience. And I just thought that was such an interesting perspective on it all,
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see at times that Swafford is quite traumatized, even though they've not been in battle yet.
Yeah. And the things they saw, I mean, the Highway of Death, which I think, the art department, everybody, the way they recreated that for the film. I mean, it was obviously not as awful as the real thing, but I think it gave a good sense of what that was like, and just to see that is so traumatic, just to see that kind of death.
Absolutely. So if we could now talk about Sicario, so to Roger and James, I wondered if you could talk about your work together on this film and how you both collaborate together.
Well, it's pretty much every film we collaborate on, not just Sicario.
Yeah, totally.
It's basically, we work as a team. We talk about everything. We know what we need. And I'm trying to allow Roger just to think about the visuals while I'm thinking about the cranes. I'm thinking about where the dailies are going and what that workflow is going to be. I also talk with the producers. I talk with the visual effects people all the time because they may want to shoot it a certain way, but Roger would prefer to shoot it another way. So I take the time and sit down with them and say, why is it that you want it this way? Well, can we do it this way? And so I do all the talking, basically.
Yeah, actually, James is the communicator. I'm not much of a communicator. Well, partly on a film. I mean, I operate a camera myself, and I want to be on set, and I want to be concentrating on the day. But on any film, there's a lot of background work that has to be done to prep for the next day, the next week, the next month, or have the dailies,
right.
Control of the dailies, or the post-production chain, and how information gets from one department to another. So there's a lot of that goes on that James.
And the thing is that because we're constantly in communication about it, I know what Roger wants. I know what he's looking for, and I'm on the set. So in the mornings I go and I look at dailies and tweak the dailies if it's not quite what we saw on the set. So it's basically being able for Roger to be in two places at one time.
It's funny, you'd think filmmaking will get more simple because there's so much wonderful technology to help you out, but it actually makes it much more complicated. When it was just a film camera and, it'd be one camera and a couple of lenses and off you'd go with a tripod or a dolly and it was a small crew. Yeah, it was really simple, but now it's so complicated.
Well, and also because visual effects keeps changing as well as cameras and everything. So somebody's got to keep on top of all those changes to know that, there's a simpler way, or, we could do it this way, or, this really is a problem. So it's just extending range, basically, by having two people.
Yeah.
There's a really, really nice quote that Denis Villeneuve said about you on this film. He says, Sicario was a film I really had to make with Roger. I needed someone with his mastery of the frame and space. and I don't know if I would have done the film without Roger. So I just wanted to ask you about your kind of your working relationship. I think this was your second film together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Prisoners was the first time we worked together. Yeah, Denny's lovely. He's been very charitable there. I'm sure he'd have made the film. Whether it had been the same film, maybe not, because you have a relationship with a director, and you know, Denny's very collaborative, and you maybe go in a particular direction because it's the combination of both of your kind of approaches, really.
But it's also trust, because we know him so well now, and we know that we're all going for the same thing, and so he knows that we're on his side. It was one of those things that the first time that we met him, we met him once, at this event, and he was lovely. But then the first time he came over for dinner to talk about Prisoners, we immediately had that connection, and that makes it so much easier because he has a wonderful sense of humor. You'd almost think that he was English. He has a really great sense of humor. Yeah. So that makes it so much easier to communicate. And he's it's one of the fun things about working on movies is the collaboration, and is the fact that every movie is different because the directors are different. And we have great experiences with a lot of different directors, but they're all different.
Thing is with Denny as well, I mean, it started on Prisoners, obviously we hadn't worked together, so it was kind of nice to have quite a long prep on Prisoners. And I'm not sure Denny had done that before in a film where we sat down and went through the script together and talked about, maybe you could lose some dialogue. Maybe you don't need this scene. Maybe that should, just different approaches. And then storyboarding ideas, visual ideas, and the overall look of the film, but very specifically how one scene would play out in one still shot, and another scene might need to be played in details and stuff like that. So when we got to Sicario, we had enjoyed that process so much. We did the same thing, and basically in the production office in where were we, Albuquerque or Santa Fe? Wherever we were.
No,
in our production office anyway.
Albuquerque.
It was in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And in the production office, he would, because it was a studio.
Yeah, right.
He would lock the door, and we would stay inside and just sort of be sketching ideas for shots and what we wanted to see. And then, half the day we would be scouting locations, or Denny would be working on casting or whatever. But, just that sort of, that kind of relaxed time, as Denny would call it, the best time, because it's a time you can dream. You're not thinking about the schedule and the money it's going to cost and what would happen if it rained. You're not thinking about all the technical, logistical challenges you have to overcome. You're thinking about what would you ideally want, So that was what is great about working with Denny. And I mean, we did the same thing on Blade Runner. We had months of prep on that. Just talking ideas, just throwing out different ideas. And, it's great when you have somebody you can do that with. And there's no sort of thing, well, I put an idea up and then it's thrown away. Then you don't feel bad about it.
And you don't feel bad about throwing out an idea that just comes into your mind without thinking, is this stupid or not? You can just throw it out, and then
just try it, see how it lands.
They could say, but that doesn't work because of this. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. So it ends up getting to better places because you get all the ideas on the table.
Which is also what we've done with Sam, Mendes as well, very much so. Certainly on Skyfall in 1917, you have that prep period, that dreaming time, if you like,
Yeah, and so that kind of leads into my next question, because you're talking about, when you're storyboarding, you're trying out all the different ideas, you're not worried about schedule and budget and all those kind of things. So I wanted to ask you about the highway border crossing sequence in Sicario. I'm just going to pop an image on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, there were two of the hardest, two of the most challenging things about Sicario was, the border crossing, but then there was actually being in Mexico, being the other side of the border. And production for a long, long time, production wanted us to find somewhere in America, not to go to Mexico.
They suggested Fort Lauderdale.
And then they would suggest places like, I don't know, Puerto Rico or something. And it was just not viable. So, there was two different challenges. And I remember there was a production meeting where we said at one point, look, the script says Mexico, it's such a character, we have to go to Mexico. So we found a way in the schedule, the producers found a way in the schedule to take enough days with a small crew to go to, actually it was Mexico City we shot in, to do the driving stuff and the jail. But the bridge, the crossing, was always a problem. We did go to El Paso, and we all scouted on the bridge. The customs and everybody allowed us to walk on the bridge. And we did think for a moment we could shoot there, but it was just totally ridiculous. It was totally impractical. But we wanted that sense of scale of the border crossing, as I say, the one between the one at El Paso to Juarez, isn't it, the other side, which is what it was really in the script. And Patrice, our production designer, said, well, what I could do is take a parking lot on the outskirts of Albuquerque, and I could construct basically the bridge, the border crossing, and then with a little bit of CG work, we could kind of get the extension. So we decided to go that route, but Denny still wanted to connect it with the real location and the Rio Grande and the whole, view of it. So then we got this aerial crew to go and do a helicopter shot on the actual El Paso bridge into Mexico. And I'm not sure how legal it was, but they got this wonderful shot, in theory, following our convoy of black SUVs across the border. But actually, there were no SUVs. You couldn't do that. But they shot the shot with the idea of following a car that went across to get the timing right, and then a little bit of CG work put in the convoy. So, that was the one shot that really connected the actual location with our parking lot outside of Albuquerque. But, it's like, what is the balance in it? And what was important, I remember Denny and I talking about this. What was important was not the environment around the bridge. What was important was all the cars. The kind of excitement of the scene wasn't that anything was going fast. It was that all these cars were stuck and going very slowly. And these guys were walking around with guns and shooting. And that made it really, really tense. So it was almost the flip side of an action scene, if you like. It was actually in a traffic jam,
No,
once we embraced that, we realized this is really interesting.
That's when you find the way.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember that just us coming to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works brilliantly in the film. So it'd be great now if we could start talking about Fargo that you made with your most frequent collaborators, the Coen brothers. So the scene that would be good to look at is the scene where Steve Buscemi's character gets pulled over by the police. It kind of turns into a bloodbath. So the question I really wanted to ask you is about kind of shooting on film at night when it's like quite a quiet kind of country road. Just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that and how, you might approach that now shooting digitally. What's it like to shoot this kind of scene on film back in 1996?
Well, I mean, for many reasons, I kind of think it's overlit now. But I remember at the time not thinking that. When we first started talking about this night scene, a lot of car work's always difficult. And then the idea of being out in the darkness in the middle of the nowhere with actually no light source at all. The question was then, well, what do we want to see of the background? And I remember us having this conversation, and I think it was probably me suggested that. I said, well, maybe we don't want to see the background. As long as you know they're on a road, maybe it's okay to play it in complete blackness. And I said, well, we don't have the budget to light it. I mean, how are you going to light a background anyway? So I suggested we play everything as though it was lit by the headlights or the interior lights or the brake lights or whatever. And I look at it now and I think, well, I could have taken, I could have let it be darker still, but that's your ideas change. It's hard on film, you tend to play safe on film. I did anyway. I'd always give it a little bit more than I thought I really needed, Now it's not the same with digital cameras. Now you know what you're shooting. You can be a bit more. You can take more risks because they're not risks. You see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, with Sicario, there's that scene just after the tunnel where Benicio del Toro's character is holding the police officer by gunpoint, and kind of he's kind of swamped in shadow in the back seat, and you're really able to kind of push that quite far. And I imagine have a good night's sleep after shooting it, not worrying.
Yeah, I mean, it really is true, I mean, I say on film, I would always give it a little bit more and think, well, I'll print it down later, and then, but your taste changes as well, I remember seeing a film Conrad Hall shot years ago, Fat City, where John Huston directed, the boxing film. One of my favorite films. It's an amazing movie. And I remember watching that and talking to a great British cinematographer, Dick Bush, about it. And I said, well, have you seen this film? The lighting is fantastic. It's so dark and real, and the exteriors are so bright and burnt out. And Dick said, yeah, but it's too extreme, isn't it? And if you look at it now, you think, no, it's a bit conservative now. It's just how, the whole, tastes have changed, and people have managed to push it more and more towards what it's really like, towards reality rather than being slightly stagey.
You can definitely see, kind of looking at Assassination of Jesse James, the fact that having kind of like single kind of light sources and just letting the shadows be completely black. It seems like you learn to kind of trust it more as your career has kind of.
Yeah, there's another thing to that is also that if you're working with a director like on Jesse James with Andrew Dominic, who, when he said he wanted something to be black, he really meant it. Yeah. He wanted it to be black, and there's a sort of difference, the scene in Fargo in the car. I really needed to see those actors' faces. It really, I wouldn't have gone that much darker. I'd have gone a little bit dark, and maybe I'll print it down next time we do a transfer or something. But it's really about seeing the characters. You didn't want to lose Peter Stromar's face, in the profile and all that. So, it's a balance. In Jesse James, there were times when it's really dark and silhouetted, but that was just right for the moments there. You didn't need to see those backgrounds. You know what I mean? It's a balance between that the moment in the story, the kind of film it is, and the director, how far the director wants you to go, really.
Definitely. So the next film that would be good to talk about is No Country for Old Men, another Coen Brothers film. So I'm just going to share my screen again. So it would be really great to talk about the Eagle Pass Hotel sequence that we can see on the screen at the moment. In fact, you know, a lot of the film takes place in motel rooms.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you'd like to talk about how you kind of used light and shadow, particularly how you kind of either showed or didn't show Javier Bardem's character as well.
Well, again, that you know, not seeing Javier and the mystery and the feet in the light under the door, that's all things that sort of came about in discussions and storyboarding in pre-production. You know, I say you kind of, I mean, Joel and Ethan are very, very, you know, they're very, very experienced in all the aspects of filmmaking, you know. From visuals, and they cut their own films, so they know the pace of the edit. So basically, the sequence with Moss inside that hotel room is very much in their heads. You know, the kind of pacing of it, and the footsteps outside the door, and the light going on and off and stuff. A little things change as you do it, but not an enormous amount. Certainly not in that sequence. But where things get developed, I suppose, is actually during location scouting, and being on an actual set, being on an actual in a room or in a corridor or in the hotel lobby, and looking at that. Then that's when those shots and the way the scene plays out comes to life, if you like. And then you break down what is on location and what's a set, you know. So that interior, the room with Moss sitting on the bed, that's a set. But the corridor is actually a location because, one, we couldn't afford to build the corridor. And two, there was a great corridor on location. So, you know, those sort of things are trade-off. The lobby is a real hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And, you know, so you kind of make those balances, and you discuss the sort of details as you look at locations, you know. The way it was lit, I mean, again, is something that really I felt, well, you know, it was just more interesting to play him in silhouette. And then I thought, well, I want to see his face, Josh's face at some time. So why I just have a lamp there? Why can't I have a lamp? You know, that's so I wanted to keep it really simple. So there's the lamp on the bedside table, and then there's the light coming through the window as if it were coming from a street light outside. So you start working that, and you start kind of talking to the production designer and the set dresser about the kind of curtains you want on the window, and how the window relates to the rest of the set. And then do you want, you know, when the light's out, how do you define the doorknob? And, you know, so you need a bit of light coming through the curtain that's going to reach the door, you know. So there are all these things you have to work out, so they work technically to kind of to fulfill what you've got in your head creatively, I suppose. You know?
I think one of my favourite sequences or scenes in this film and of your work is the scene where Moss goes back to the crime scene at night, and then he's pursued by the drug dealers, and you transition in this scene from night through dawn and then into daylight. I can imagine there was a lot of planning involved in that. Could you talk through how you achieved that?
Yeah, no, that was, you know, the hardest thing was finding the location. And finding the location so that the action could be staged in such a way that you could make use of the dawn, you know, and
it took a long time to shoot, many days to keep coming back and getting a shot.
Do the dawn and dusk. We shot dawn and dusk over a number of days. But that big bowl where the drug deal has gone wrong and Moss turns up in his truck. My big regret about that was the little mound where he drives up his truck, and it sits on the mound, and he looks down at all the other vehicles where the shooting has been. It just couldn't stage the action in such a way that when the dawn came up, it was directly behind the truck. And I still, to this day, I'm really annoyed about that, because if we'd shot at another time of the year, the sun would have been further south and it would have been fine. But it was
still annoyed about that.
And so I had to recreate the dawn with lighting behind the truck. But then when the real dawn came, in combination with my lighting, it didn't quite match. So I'm always a bit annoyed about that. I can't watch the scene without being aware of it. But, you do your best. I mean, it was like a location that was perfect and that had this huge overlook, which was great for the opening daylight scene where Moss comes across all the trucks down below him when he's out shooting. But it also worked that I could put a light source up there to kind of flood the area with a kind of fake moonlight. And I don't know how else I would have lit that scene if there hadn't been somewhere I could have put a large light source that would have been out of frame for most of the scene. Because it was quite a complicated scene at night. It was quite a lot of different angles. So, and we didn't have a lot of time to shoot the actual night work, So again, it's sort of creative challenges and then the reality of what you're offered as a location. And then you have to get down to the nitty gritty of how do you technically do the best you can given what you're being given, And so there's always things you think, if only,
I think as an audience member, it really is an incredible scene. And I think for all of the students and aspiring filmmakers, do you think that they should fight to be able to shoot these kind of scenes the way that you approach that with the transitioning from night into day? Because I can imagine, first AD and producers and people saying, yeah, it's going to be a scheduling nightmare, trying to talk them out of it. But you as filmmakers, you've got to justify the big screen.
Well, the hard thing is that the first production kind of note is, okay, we'll do this day for night, or we'll do it day for dusk or day for dawn. So we'll shoot on a cloudy day, and it doesn't look the same. So Joel, Ethan and I, we spent a long time looking for the river, looking for the location where Moss dives in the river and the bad guy's truck comes to a halt on the cliff top, looking for all those little beats and then figuring out the shots and storyboarding it. And then I went back at dawn, at dusk, to all those positions, and I marked out exactly when I wanted to shoot them to the half hour. At 6:30, between 6 and 6:30, I wanted to be on this angle in the morning. And then in the evening, I wanted to do this angle. And so working with the AD, we managed to schedule it so we could do a day's shooting, something else, or night work, do other night work, like there's a little scene on the bridge. We could do the night work and then also have the option of doing the dawn and dusk on either side of that. So, yes, if we hadn't worked that out, they'd have said, well, you've got to do it as a fake, day for dawn sort of thing, which wouldn't have been the same. I wanted everything to play in silhouette. I wanted the reflection of the sky on the water. I wanted that kind of feel, so, and, you work hard, don't you, to get it?
And if you want something like that, you first have to come up with a solution before you approach them.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. You can't just say, I want to do it this way. You have to say and see it would work. Because if we
this
did
is
it
how
this
we
way,
can do it. Because, a film like No Country for Old Men, it was a reasonable budget, but it wasn't like...
It wasn't a big one.
6 people and a dog shooting for 6 months. You know what I mean? It wasn't. We had a schedule we had to make. It was quite a lot of pressure on it. We'd got a week shooting down in Marfa, Texas, which was away from where our base was in Santa Fe, and that was expensive. Those kind of moves are very expensive, so everything has to be traded off. And we had a lot of other night work, which was very expensive. So, it's a trade-off. But as James said, you need to come with a solution or a possible solution and work it out, not just say, no, I can't do that. It's got to be dawn, because it's never going to happen.
And so with most of your career, Roger, you shot on celluloid. I know you're kind of shooting Alexa usually now, but I guess like when you were starting out, when you were learning your craft, you had to work in a very disciplined way. You had to use a light meter and really think about how you want something to look. And for the aspiring,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the way we work now.
I don't know.
There's no difference.
So the question was for the DOPs coming up now, just starting to learn their craft. What advice would you give them? Because I guess in a way it's not a good thing. You can just look at a monitor that shows you a reasonably good picture of what something looks like. I think, would you advise people get a light meter? And
I still use a light meter. I mean, maybe it's because of the way I just developed my eye, but yeah, I still use a light meter. I light the set with my eyes and then check it with the meter. Yeah, and now I can go to the monitor and make sure that what I've been doing is gives me a safety kind of check. But I don't light from the monitor. I don't use that as my main guide. My main guide's my eyes and my light meter, as it always has been. And I think it's good. I mean, I know not many people shoot film now, but I think it's very good in colleges and film schools that students do shoot on film.
I think it's important to learn exposure. I mean, to learn what exposure is, because there's a lot of latitude in digital, but so you can get away with things. But when you're bringing it down the road and you're going into visual effects, you're going to find that you're not getting away with it so well.
But also to learn color science, and that's an important one. I mean, so many people don't seem to understand color, and just the simple things between different kind of light sources. And, the simple thing between a daylight LED, for instance, the spectral range of an LED, and actual daylight. They're not a match. And to understand why one doesn't look like the other exactly, or why a tungsten light source is better than the LED equivalent right now in certain situations because it's got a wider spectral range, things like that. I'm not technical. I don't know that much of it, but I think your eyes get to understand the differences, and you kind of learn. I say color science is really important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Harding, who interviewed you last time, and myself, we both shoot on film and encourage the students both to shoot still film and like write down their settings and shoot Super 16 or Super 8, just for the discipline. And that's what I was kind of getting at with the question. Encouraging aspiring cinematographers to kind of work in a more disciplined way, even though it isn't as required as it would have been decades ago. Right. It's still important. I mean, the fact that you still use a light meter is really important for everyone to know. And I mean, one of the things. So when I was at film school, one of the cinematography students was saying that they were going to post on your website, post a question. I was very surprised that the students got replies on the website of how you do stuff and things. You're incredibly generous with like sharing your technique and your craft with upcoming filmmakers. So before we go to ask some of the Q&A questions from the participants, do you have any advice in particular, like people in the Southwest that are looking to work in film? Do you have any advice on how to break into the industry?
I mean, I don't think it was very different. And when I went to the film school, end of the 60s, it's a very different world than it is now. I don't know how I would have ever got anywhere near a film industry if I hadn't have been to the National Film School. I don't think it would have happened. I was not somebody that was confident enough. I wasn't somebody, I'd hardly been in London. I can't imagine myself, where I am now without having gone to a film school and had that time just to find find myself really, and not necessarily learning the craft. It's just finding myself as a person.
But it's also finding your approach and finding what it is you like. So what you're offering is unique. Not that you're copying somebody else, but you now know what it is you like and can say, well, I think maybe this scene should be shot this way. And also going out and volunteering for no payment jobs with somebody shooting something, because that becomes material that you can show to someone, because you need to be able to offer something. And if you have taken the time to learn to sort of work instinctively, because you can learn all the things from the books that you want to learn, but then your work's not going to stand out necessarily, or you're not going to be able to come on a set and something changes and you're able to change with it. So I think it's really, really, really finding what it is, why you want to do this.
Yeah, why you want to do it. Yeah. I mean, I think that now, as I say, it's a totally different world now. There's so many more colleges and film schools and departments there's a department in the college and school in Dartmouth that studies film and TV. Everybody has, some facilities where you can make your own films. And I think that's great. We've, a few times we've been, well, not been, but we've done it online, or we've been to the film Plymouth, what's it called? The Plymouth
University, I don't know.
The
Rebel Film Festival.
The Rebel Film Festival in Plymouth, and they show such an array of short films and from all over, but a number from the Southwest. And there's people just make their own films and show them around festivals, and they get noticed. People do see them, So, and the experience of doing it,
And after your studies, how did you kind of build up to the point with Sid and Nancy that you broke into features? You did documentaries, you did music videos. Like, what was that path like for you after education?
Well, I mean, I started off really. There was quite a long time with not doing anything and sort of. Yeah, again, really depressed. I wouldn't say there wasn't. But I got lucky. I started looking for work as an assistant, and I did a day and realized I was no good at that. That wasn't me. So I started knocking on doors saying I was a cinematographer. And strangely enough, I knocked on a door and I got a low-budget feature film to shoot. It was probably a year or so after I left the film school. And then there was some I'd gone to the television companies looking for work, and I'd met Chris Menges, and there were a couple of projects documentaries that he didn't want to do, and I don't know if he put my name up, somebody did, and because I'd shot documentary work at film school, and so the first documentary I got to do was a film on a yacht sailing around the world for 9 months, making a film not about the sailing so much as how the crew got on with each other, which wasn't very good. No, they had issues, and they had issues with us, actually, me being there making a film. So it was kind of interesting. But those are the opportunities that came up, and I just grabbed them. I didn't have any responsibilities at the time. And, off I went doing these different movies. Yes, then I started doing concert footage because, documentary, you go as a second or third camera shooting a rock concert, and then somebody's doing a music video and they ask you to do something that becomes more of a drama with a band, and then there's a bit of story, and things build up, and then gradually I was offered some television drama, and then really Mike Radford, who had been at the National Film School, but I didn't really know, but I'd been working with on the odd documentary project. He was doing a feature film, and he asked me to shoot it because I'd already by then done dramatic work for television. and that was it really. Once I started doing that, that was my entry into feature films.
Great. That's really encouraging for the students to hear. So I'm just going to ask some questions that have been posted during the session. So Dylan says, hi, I was wondering what you see as the key moments in cinematography history that any aspiring cinematographers should check out.
Aha.
What was the question?
Moments in cinematography history. Well,
here we go.
Millions and millions, really. And it's really difficult, isn't it? Because where is it? Is it Eisenstein's movies? Is it Battleship Potemkin? Is it Andrei Konchalovsky? Is it Vadim Yusuf? Is it Ilim Klimov's Come and See that Andrei Alexei Rodionov shot, who we talked to a few weeks ago, lovely man. I don't know. That's a wonderful piece of cinematography. Or is it In Cold Blood that Conrad Hall shot in black and white? Or Fat City that I mentioned earlier? Or is it? I don't know. There's so many movies. When I was at college, before I went to film school, really, the films that really affected me, probably more than any, were the Italian neorealist movies, But then I don't think there's one moment, you couldn't point at one film. I mean, is it Godard's Breathless? I don't know. What stands out? I mean, millions of films stand out, don't they? Seven Samurai, for God's sake. Sancho the Bailiff. I mean, I don't know. There's so many great movies and that have been very singular in their their visual approach to film. So I don't know. I would encourage everybody to watch everything that's ever made, especially, let's say, by Tarkovsky, Jean-Pierre Melville, and Michelangelo Antonioni. Those would be my...
And Samuel H. asks, with which directors have you had the most creative freedom with your work?
I don't... Creative freedom, that's a funny expression, really, because, you're working to a director's guidance. You're trying to help a director envision something. I mean, creative freedom. If I wanted creative freedom, I would be a director, but I'm not a director. I'm a cinematographer. I don't know. I look at the films that I've worked on, and it's like I've it's just been wonderful to be part of the process, really. I don't, if I want creative freedom, which I sometimes do, I just get my stills camera and go for a walk.
But also, you've got to say that it's part of the process of whether on deciding whether to do a film or not. We meet with the director, and if the director seems like a person that's just going to say, "Okay, put the camera over there on a 50 millimeter lens," then that's not a project that we're going to do.
Yeah, we've never been on that, or at least I've never been on a project like that and stayed on it. No, it's just if it's not a collaboration, I'm going to go fishing,
Okay, and so one final question I just wanted to ask you, which comes from the Q&A, is when did you both begin working together? How did you end up working together?
We met on a movie, a Mike Apted movie, actually, and I was the script supervisor. He was the DP, and so for and we got married pretty quickly, and a couple of years went by where I was still scripting, but oftentimes I'd be on a different film because it is a director's choice. And we decided that we wanted to, be together most of the time. So I stopped working, and I would be on those sets, and I would work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so it would take a while for production to understand, but I also started out in a film lab, so I knew so much about film. And then gradually, as we realized that this is the way we were going to work, and it worked well, I started taking a title, and then I took a small salary, but we did it, basically from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean,
it just worked.
It just worked. I mean, you would be on, once you stopped scripting on other people's films. We worked together where James scripted as well a number of times. But then she would just be on the film with me and just be working behind the scenes. But then it became, she's obviously doing so much work that she deserved a title. So.
Did that answer your question? Sorry.
Definitely. And it seems that your kind of greatest, most long-standing collaboration is with each other. That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's your life experience.
Yeah.
We like to experience life together, so we experience work together. And as I said previously, probably not for everybody, but I operate the camera. So, I really am, involved in what's happening on the set all the time, not what's happening behind the scenes. So it really kind of works to have that relationship.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Roger and James, for your time this evening. It's been really fantastic evening,
pleasure.
Sharing your movie knowledge with us. So, thank you to everybody. And thanks very much.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, and hopefully we'll be on the campus again someday.
Yes.
When we can travel.
Yes.
It'd be great to see you in person.
Yeah, it'll be lovely.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.